Hi, welcome to my podcast. It's Fitzdog Radio, coming to you every Wednesday. Used to be Tuesday, and that wasn't working. I needed a little more time after the weekend to process, and now we're coming out on Wednesdays. I don't know if anybody even noticed. Does anybody notice to just go into your queue and you just listen to it after you finish listening to Tiger Belly and NPR? I don't know what you guys listen to. But I got you now. Thank you for joining me. Always appreciative of your listenership, and your support means a lot to me. I talked on Sunday Papers this week about a dead squirrel in my backyard that got covered in maggots. I'm not going to go through that again. I think people were a little squeamish. I think maybe they preferred I not talk about a squirrel with maggots on a show where they're maybe eating brunch. I walked down Venice Beach this week and saw a number of topless women. That seems to be a new thing on Venice Beach. It used to just be you'd get a rando European coming out, popping the top off, getting no tan line. And now you're getting California girls. You know, it used to be you heard them talking to the line. Now they're talking, Valley girl speak, and I like it. I like it a lot. It's actually distracting because now I'm kind of looking for it. I didn't used to scan the beach like a perv. Now I am a little bit. I go to the beach almost every day. You can see from my tan. The fuck am I doing on the beach? Jesus. Swimming in the water. Try not to step on a stingray. But look, I'm married. Well, what do I need to look at any of that? It's kind of the paradox of being married is that you're still a sexual being. But I think it all feeds. It's like I would hope to God my wife is looking at good-looking guys and bringing that energy into the bedroom and sharing it with me, using me. That's fine. Long as it's getting done and it stays in the marriage, then, use it. I took her out. She broke her foot. I think I talked about that last week. She broke her foot because she's a klutz. She fell off a bike. We were at Venice Beach and she fell off a bike. And now I am in full care mode. I am doing all the laundry and the cooking and the cleaning and the shopping and a lot of like, can you get me a glass of water? Can you bring me my computer? Hey, someone's at the door. It's very hard to get anything else done, but it's also a labor of love. I kind of am enjoying that I have her. I have her captive. Like, she can't do shit without me. I like the power. It's almost like a Edgar Allan Poe short story about a man whose wife has no arms and legs. Wasn't there a movie about that? There was a movie about a woman who had no arms and legs, and then the guy had he was a controlling personality. It's not that bad, but she has a broken foot. So I have a little bit of an edge around that. I took her out Saturday night. Saturday night is our date night. I never do shows. We always go out. And so I took her to this restaurant that we like on Abbot Kinney called Piccolo, and got her drunk on Aperol spritzes. She got really buzzy, and then she wanted to drive down the beach. So we drove along the beach, and then we came home, and she almost fell. She's got a little cart. She puts her leg up on it. She almost fell off and broke the other fucking foot. Got angry. I was like, don't be a klutz. I can't take it. Anyway, all right. Big announcement. Where are they? Here's my keys. What do we got here, ladies and gentlemen? Just bought it. I finally did it. After 40 years of wanting a Ford Mustang, I went out and I bought one on Sunday. I got a charcoal gray. It's beautiful. I found it. I found the one I wanted, and it's made me so happy. When I was a child, my favorite Matchbox car was the Corvette, the 66 pony car. And I played with it and I dreamt about it. And I got a little older and I watched that Steve McQueen movie, Bullet, where it's in San Francisco and there's an insane chase scene. I rewatched it recently. There weren't a lot of chase scenes, but there was one that was just historic. He had a 68 fastback, it was GT, and there was a guy, he was chasing a guy who was in a Charger or a Challenger, and they're racing through the streets of San Francisco, and it was so badass. And then when I got older, I was in high school, and the janitor of the school, do you say custodian? I'm sorry. It was 1983. Back then you said janitor. Anyway, this guy, nice guy, Puerto Rican dude named Edgar, and he had a 68 Mustang, and he was selling it. It was kind of an ugly yellow. And he said, I said, yeah, I think I want to buy it. And he said, all right, I'll take you for a test drive. So we went out to the back parking lot during school. This is crazy. This wouldn't happen today. And the guy starts it, and it has no key. And he shows me, you just turn it. So I drive it around the neighborhood. I drive it like an asshole. I think I scared him. And then I ended up not getting it because my father said, unless I was a mechanic, I would be fucked if I got a Mustang. So I didn't buy it, but we got high at class one day. And then at the end of lunch, I went with my friend and we took it for a joyride. And he saw us pulling into the parking lot and he almost punched me in the face. He fucking grabbed me. And he didn't turn me in or anything, but you know, it's what you did. And then I was a parking attendant at the country club in White Plains, and Mrs. Boyle had like a 72 Mustang, and she drove it. She babied it. And it was a V8, and she babied it. She used to come in, and she was very sweet. And then she'd leave, and I would take that motherfucker out, driving it through Elmsford like a madman. And I fell in love with that. So many layers of love about the Mustang. And my buddy Frank had one in high school. His was like, I didn't like the early 80s Mustangs at all. I mean, they were pretty fast, but they were ugly. I didn't like the way they handled. But we used to drive into the city, and I just remember driving down the East Side Highway, the FDR, and God, the drinking and driving that we did back then. And we weaving in and out of traffic. We were the assholes that you see today and you go, are those guys, do they have a death wish? Like that's how we drove through the city. I don't know why we never got a DUI. We never got a ticket. And our prom night, I remember that we ordered a limo and the limo didn't show up. So we took the Mustang. Anyway, so I got it on Sunday. I surprised my wife. I said, you got to see what's going on out front. And she came out, and the second she saw it, she knew I'd done it. She didn't know I was going to buy a car. And I am somebody that I'm not extravagant. I'm very frugal. I'm a generous friend, and I spend money in smart ways. Like we've traveled around the world every year. My entire kids' lives, we've traveled somewhere around the world. That's where I choose to spend my money, and not on stuff. And so I always felt guilty, and I always felt almost afraid to buy a car. Like I just felt like I'd buy it and then I'd have a bad year and I'd have to sell it. I don't know, which is never going to happen. I don't have those kinds of bad years. And, and even if I did, so what? You only live once. So I always hesitated, and I've been debating whether to get a Tesla. And then I was like, fuck this. Elon Musk is such a douchebag. So I did it. And I drove home. I put on Led Zeppelin 2, listening to fucking Ramble On the way home. Pull up to the house, Whole Lot of Love. Felt like a teenager. Felt good. And I just found excuses to go to the store. I just want to drive it. So anyway, that's the big news this weekend. And the other big news is in a week, I'm going to make a very big announcement. It might, in fact, have to do with a special that's coming out very soon. I can't even say the title yet. I was told by my publicist not to say any of this information, but there's going to be an announcement in a week. And I'm going to tell you all about it, but I need you guys. I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast that you are somebody who is a fan. I hate to say that word fan. You're a listener and you're a supporter and you're somebody that I have somehow tricked into listening to me. And I am going to implore you. I'm going to ask you for the most support you've ever given me. I want you to watch this thing the day it comes out. Spread the word on social media. Tell your friends. Comment. Blow it up. Because the truth is, it's filthy. It has words in it that shouldn't be said, even at a cocktail party. These kinds of words are inappropriate. And so it's going to get flagged by YouTube. And the way YouTube works is they have a couple of woke, transitioning people listen to the specials. And then if they flag it and say it's got something that's inappropriate, it just doesn't get spread to anybody. And so the only counts you get, the only viewers are the people that you send specifically to it. So I'm counting on you guys. I need you more than ever. So this is a special that I've been hammering out this material since the pandemic. This isn't like somebody that got a deal. They've been doing it for 5 years and they have a hook or an angle. This is a comic that's been doing it for 35 years. And this material has worked. I have found a set through pounding out shows at Late Show Friday in fucking Cincinnati, great shows at the store in LA, and honing down this hour. I'm very proud of it. I feel really good about it. It was really hard to edit it, but it's coming out. So I'm going to be promoting it. Look out for these appearances starting in a week. I'm going to go on a press tour. I'm going to be on Joe Rogan Experience at the end of the month, Your Mom's House, Kill Tony, Matt and Shane Gillis' show, Marin, Neil Brennan, Harlan Williams, Adam Carolla, Doug Benson, Bert Kreischer, Ryan Sickler, Tom Papa, Andrew Santino, Pete Holmes, Ari Shafir, Legion of Skanks, Bonfire, Jim Norton, We Might Be Drunk, David Cross's podcast, Howie Mandel. I mean, it's crazy. I'm hitting it all. I'm flying to Austin. I'm flying to New York. I'm already pre-taping some of them in LA, and we're going to try to get the numbers up, try to make this mean something. It's so hard these days breaking through. There's so much comedy out there, and I'm really hoping that this is something people talk about. And while I'm doing all that, I'll be on tour. On the weekends, I'll be in Louisville, August 23rd and 24th, Denver, August 29th through 31st, Austin at the Mothership, September 6th through the 8th, Temecula, Alaska in Fairbanks in September, Tulsa in October, Tacoma and San Francisco this fall. So go to Fitzdog.com, get some details. Stuff about the special is going to be on the website. You can check it out. And that's it. All right, let's get to the podcast. This guy's been on before. He zoomed in about a year ago from Ireland. He's literally the biggest comic to come out of Ireland in 30 years. He's one of my faves. I've watched all his specials a number of times. And I know you're going to love him. You probably loved him when he was on last year. In person, just had him on. You know him from Derry Girls. He's the father in Derry Girls. And he was on that show. What was the thing about the priest? Father Ted. He was on the last episode of that. Anyway, he is touring the North America. He's in town to promote it. And I know you're going to love him. Please welcome to the show, Tommy Tiernan.
All good.
In person. You guys listened to, I looked it up, I think it was September of 2023 you were on, and we were over Zoom.
Yeah.
You were in Galway, Ireland. Can I say that that's the area you live in?
Totally.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know if you got stalkers.
No, no.
You sound let down.
Yeah. Got stalkers. No.
That's A-list.
Yeah. No, we don't have stalkers in Ireland. I'm trying to figure out why. I guess because everybody kind of knows everybody. That there's no need to be stalking somebody because he's your third cousin. Why would you?
Yeah, and he's gonna sit at the pub next to you that night.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Who's the biggest star in Ireland right now?
Well, there are different types of stars. So there are people who are well known around the world who are Irish, and there are people who are just well known in Ireland.
Yeah, just in Ireland, who's the biggest?
I don't know, really. I'd be fairly up there.
You would?
Yeah, totally. But it's not really. It's when I see, but the stardom thing is different. There, it's more about approachability.
Yes.
It's more like you're to be the most well known person is literally that you are well known. It's not that you're famous. It's not that you're a star.
There's not a lot of red carpet events and things like that.
You're just, everybody knows you.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of us in that position.
All right.
But we don't really do stars. So a star would be someone like Bono or Colin Farrell or
Liam Neeson.
Yeah, they're people who have they have purchase around the world. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're well known, you don't.
Which do you prefer?
Oh, well known is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's friendly.
Yep.
People come up to you all the time, say hello, and they're kind, and they annoy you then when they're drunk. But it's lovely.
Yeah.
It's organic.
Yeah. Right. I think sometimes in the States, people, they really want it, and then they get it, and they go, what was I thinking? There's no privacy. Like, I look at people, like Jerry Seinfeld, you can't just go to a restaurant.
Sure.
People are going to come up and ask for selfies.
Yeah.
I don't get selfies. Here's what I get. About every other day, somebody will walk past me on the street, and they'll look at me, and they'll squint, and then they'll just kind of shake their head like, no. And I'm like, perfect.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I want.
I think that to be well known locally is a lovely thing, for a positive thing.
Yeah.
You then you think about people who become well known for a scandal, and you think the awful pressure that must be on them when they're in public is kind of intolerable. But I love it. Basically, I love it.
How do you have 6 kids?
6 children.
How do they deal with it? Is it cumbersome for them at all?
It's a pain in the ass.
It is.
So they don't tell people their real names.
No, really?
Well, some of them don't.
Yeah.
Some of them it's kind of like let's have this conversation.
Yeah.
But they didn't ask to have a dad who was well known, and it's important to remember, like, well known is not the same level as famous.
Right.
So if did Prince have kids? I don't know if you're.
Does Prince have kids?
Does he? I don't know.
I think he does.
But if you're, or who's Stephen Colbert? I don't know who the most Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know these people.
Yeah.
To be a child of one of those is to be almost approaching cultural royalty.
Yeah.
In lifestyle, in stuff that's done for you, in how people react to you. It is a kind of an unofficial royal family. But in Ireland, it's familiarity. People presume a familiarity.
Yeah.
And your kids didn't ask for that.
Right.
And also when you work in stand-up and you say things on stage, eat my shit. Say you said that. Say you had a whole routine about eating your own shit. And then it works that night, and hey, he's mad. He's brilliant. He's mad.
Yeah.
And then a week later, like, your 12-year-old comes in, eat my shit. Eat my shit.
And you're trying to tell him how to behave.
You're trying to tell him context. It's all about context.
Right.
Then you're walking down the street and someone says, hey, eat my shit. And then your father phones to say, well, I'm glad your mother isn't alive to hear that. So I think when you work as a comic, it's different
Yeah.
than if you're a newsreader.
Right.
So I think it is a weird one.
Yeah. I think comedians have a very special relationship with their kids because I think that, you are, I'm sure, funny around the house, but then there's also like, you're trying to be a disciplinarian when you've had a life where, like, you told me you were unemployed till you were 26 years old.
Yeah.
And, you can't lead by example because you certainly don't want them doing what you do. That's the last thing I would want is for one of my kids to do what I do.
They have, here's my dad and here's my responsible adult. They point to their mother.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I guess there must be some benefit to having a father or a parent who earns money in an unorthodox way.
Yes.
So Aisling B, I don't know if you know her, she's a great actress, comic actress and stand-up. Her mother was raised in a single-parent home. Her mother was a professional jockey.
Wow.
So I don't know I'm not sure if her wages were kind of dependent on wins.
Yeah.
You get a certain amount guaranteed for riding, but then maybe more if you won.
Sure.
So that must, I think, that kind of stuff is. I don't know if it sets them up for a slightly unorthodox way of life, but it kind of just shows, well, if your mom is a dentist and your dad is a dentist and your uncle's a dentist, maybe there's a bit of a straight path for you. But if your dad stands up and says, eat my shit every night in front of 300 drunk people.
While they cheer. Yeah.
Eat my shit.
I mean, plenty of dads say eat my shit, but then they're thrown out of the bar or the theater. You're getting paid for it.
Yeah. And then when you've been buried, the priest can say, well, we can't let the funeral pass without remembering one of his greatest bits. Everybody, eat my shit.
Flowers spelling it out in the funeral home.
Oh, yeah. When the hearse goes past instead of dad. Eat my shit.
Yeah, that's great. Well, congratulations, by the way. Your show I saw just got picked up for another season.
Oh, this chat show. Oh, yeah.
Your chat show.
Yeah. That's, thank you. That's, I think we might have been talking about this the last time about how it's a lot like this. It's conversation.
Yeah.
It's just talking. And wherever it goes is wherever it goes. But there's something about the way we do it that has made a real connection with an Irish audience. So it's a difficult show to do. Stressful. But it's worthwhile, I think. It's worthwhile. So we're delighted, yeah.
How do you prepare for a show?
I don't. That's the worst thing about it. You can't. You can't prepare.
Right.
You wait. You just wait. You sit in a room with no windows so you don't see any of the guests arriving. And you just wait. And yeah. So you can't prepare. That's what makes it stressful.
Do you have anything that, like, when I get nervous, I get a little anxious about having you in because you're somebody that I admire a lot, and I really and I think there's an intimidation when I talk to the Irish because your breadth of knowledge, your vocabulary is so much richer.
I don't think it is. I think it's just we have a varied intonation.
Okay.
That's all.
You just make it sound like a different word?
Yeah. I think we're fooling you to
Right.
think we have more words, but we don't. We
Right.
just vary the pitch.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant.
I've never heard half those words.
And, well, I just read a book by a guy named, have you heard of Rob Doyle? Great young Irish writer.
Yeah.
Jesus, like, first of all, this book is, I forget what it's called, Threshold. It's called Threshold, and it's, but the language in it, his vocabulary, it was great because it reminded me, I was an English major in college, and it reminded me when I would read books, I had a dictionary next to me and I would look them up.
Yes.
And that's how I increased my, and with him, I mean, the dictionary was like, we're not sure about this one.
Yeah.
Crazy language. And talking about traveling around the world, taking psychedelics, all different psychedelics in different areas. He goes to India, Sicily, East Germany, And in each place, it's very much like On the Road,
Oh,
the
wow.
Kerouac novel, where he's kind of traveling and discovering himself.
Yeah.
But this guy's doing it through drugs and relationships. And it's a very confessional kind of a, but yeah, I think I've always been intimidated. So when you were coming in, I was a little bit like, all right, I gotta be sharp.
I could use all the big words.
Yeah, I gotta use the big words. I browsed through my English papers from college.
But what's interesting about the word thing to me is that I would be a big fan of the idea of James Joyce.
Yeah.
So they say that Ulysses is the great book of the day and Finnegan's Wake is the great book of the night. So in that way that Ulysses describes a day in the life of these Dublin people in 1906, I think it is, that when Joyce had done that, it was called the greatest novel ever written and still is by a lot of people. So he kind of he did that bit of work and then he said, well, where is the adventure now? So the adventure then was doing a book of the night.
Mm-hmm.
What does that even mean? Is it a book about dreams? Is it a book about what type of language happens at night? And so the book is full of nonsense words, like quick, quack, quick, the quiet.
Oh, right.
It's kind of, and people get a page into it and go, and people on the spectrum read it from start to finish and go, oh my God, it's amazing.
It's speaking to me.
But I've often wondered about that on stage. Is it possible to do a Finnegan's Wake type, in terms of like surreal stand-ups?
Hmm.
And I don't really know very many American surreal. There were a few English ones in the 80s and 90s that I kind of came across, kind of daft, exotic clown creatures.
Mm-hmm.
But I've often thought, would it be possible to do, and for people to know, because we're all tied into narrative so much.
Yeah.
So stand-up comes up on stage and he goes, what the fuck? I was walking down the road and I hit a dog. And so people are tied into that. But if you get up on stage and start going, quick, whoa, sit, girl. Like, would people, is there, like, what would their reaction be?
Right.
That'd be, so just in terms of word power.
Yeah,
that's the
well, I
associations
think
I have.
I mean, my first thought is Andy Kaufman, who did very absurdist stuff that was fantastical and voices, and he used to do entire sets in a gibberish language.
That's it. That's
Yeah, yeah.
So it's been done.
Well, yeah, but it hasn't been done enough. It is extremely linear when you think about the parameters of stand-up comedy. Here's the rules: there's a microphone and a stage and a crowd. You need to do X number of minutes.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
You can bring a guitar. You were talking about your friend who plays with a guitar. You can come out with a puppet. You can come out with a team. Nobody does a team. I haven't seen a comedy team in a decade.
When you say team now, what do you mean?
Like a duo, two people going up together.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you come up, you take the mic out of the mic stand, you push it to the side. If you're a fat guy, you go, let me get this out of the way so you can see me. And then you start to complain and get irate about things that people go, I never would have thought to get angry at that. That's interesting.
What's with?
What? Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the Kaufman thing is lovely.
Yeah.
I remember watching that and loving it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, great.
Right.
Let's watch him again now. He'd slipped my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I did an interview with somebody somewhere where I had just bought, was it Man on the Moon was the movie? Was there a book by the same name or something? There's
Man
a
on the
book,
Moon was about Andy Kaufman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there was a book about Kaufman that I
Oh, right.
I can't remember what it was called.
Yeah.
I had bought it and I was on my way to be interviewed somewhere. And as I was coming into the radio studio, a guy was walking out and he saw the book and he said, I'm Andy's dad. And okay. And he said, yeah, I can't remember his name. And he said, do you want me to sign the book for you? So I have this biography of Kaufman written by somebody else, written by his pal, Lenny something or other.
Uh-huh.
And it's signed blah, 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 Andy Kaufman's dad.
Wow. Which, by the way, anybody who's a fan of Andy Kaufman, would be a very Andy Kaufman thing to do, is pretend he was his dad. I had Bob Zamuda on the podcast once. She was his sidekick.
That was the guy who wrote the book, I think, Zamuda.
Oh, yeah. That's the book. Yeah. So Zamuda comes on, and, you know, for people that don't know Andy Kaufman, Zamuda was like he'd pretend to be his manager. He'd pretend to be his alter ego. He would go out as Andy Kaufman, even though it wasn't Andy Kaufman. Andy would book a date at a nightclub and then send Bob Zamuda to do the entire show. People would boo him off the stage, and he would yell back at them. And so Zamuda comes on my podcast, and I used to do it out of the garage of my house. And so he shows up, and he's a lovely guy. He's fun. He's very forthright with telling stories. I'm sure he's told a million times. He was great about it. And then we planned this, but I said something about how his family, because his family wasn't happy about the book. So I doubt it was the father, because the family was upset that Zamuda had told some of these stories.
Can't believe I was had like that. Fuck.
I hate to break
Maybe it was another book.
I hate to break it to you.
Maybe it was Finnegan's Wake.
So I start in on him, and I go, so I don't think this book is cool. Well, his family's pissed, and I get it. And then he starts yelling at me, and and this is just an audio podcast, and we're screaming for 3 minutes, and then he threw a bunch of furniture, and then he stormed out, and then I just sat there going, I'm sorry, I don't know what just happened, and I just kind of said goodbye. And it was one of my biggest podcasts, and everybody thought it was real.
So you planned it with him beforehand as well?
Yeah.
Very good.
And I think this is the first time I've admitted that was a fake episode, because it was probably 10 years ago.
Wow. You'd wonder if those stories about the crowd booing when he sends Bob Zamuda out instead of himself are better as anecdotes than they are as lived experiences.
Well, I think that's like having a baby. It's like a lot of things in life. It's a better story. And here's some pictures when he was calm. Here's some pictures when he wasn't making us want to jump off the building. But no,
you said that with such fluency and conviction. Oh wow, that's a lived experience.
Yes. Well, you've lived it 6 times. I can't imagine. But I think a lot of the things that Kaufman did was, it was performance art, which he would get on stage at Catch a Rising Star in New York to do, a 10-minute set. He'd walk on stage. He had a sleeping bag under his arm and an alarm clock, and he'd put the alarm clock on the stool, and he'd set it for 10 minutes, unroll the sleeping bag. He'd get inside, he'd close his eyes, and he would lay there for 10 minutes. And the crowd they'd titter with laughter. Laughter would come and go. Somebody would say something, and then at the end of it, he'd leave it. It's a great story.
Yeah.
But you just paid $25 and a 2-drink minimum.
It's an unforgettable act, though.
Yeah.
But a great story.
Yeah.
Well.
So, I think that if you did something really absurdist in comedy today, you would have a hard time. But there are theaters where they embrace it more. I think we talked about Largo as a place in LA that you get more of David Cross will do something really weird there sometimes. He's become more of a monologist, but when I started with him in Boston, he used to go on stage and really do silence and act outs and then he'd scream, I'm a chicken donut, I remember was the payoff for one of his bits.
Yeah. I manage a chipmunk band. All your best jokes come true.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's, I suppose, in actuality, like you said, you have the freedom to do whatever you want. So you really are limited by your imagination.
Yes.
And what you have the courage to do.
Right.
So it's all there. So, and there'll be a wave, and in that wave, there'll be a surrealist comic or two.
Right.
Maria Bamford I wouldn't say she's surreal. I guess my knowledge of American stand-ups isn't great, so I'm kind of choosing the people that I see at festivals and stuff like that.
Right.
But Maria's stuff is quite. There's a non-linear kind of flow to that, which is gorgeous.
Yes.
It's very liberating when you see that kind of stuff as well. It just breaks up straitjacket that the rest of us can find ourselves in sometimes. It's lovely.
Yeah, and it's really, I think you said it is courage, because, I mean, what is courage in stand-up? It's literally, it's hard to describe to people what it's like to bomb on stage, whether it's your first time or whether it's last week, the pain that you feel, and it's different for every comedian. And I think some have a thicker skin, like Bill Hicks famously would go up and he would do his shit, and if they didn't like it, it did not matter to him at all, which some people would say, well, that's not good. You know, you are ultimately an entertainer, but you're only going to get to that really interesting stuff if you've got pretty thick skin. Because if it hurts you too much, you're not going to take those chances.
Yeah, I'm not sure if ultimately you are an entertainer. I don't know what you are. I think there are other possibilities. But you remind me of a comic in Ireland who is fantastic. I can't say his name now in case I say the wrong thing, but I'm going to say it's generally true. He's tall, dark, and handsome. He's a wild intelligence.
Really? You're comparing me to him?
He's a wild intelligence. He also has a kind of a self-destructive impulse.
All right.
And one of his things is if he's on a bill, and if he has no respect for the act that has gone on before him, but the audience like him, so the audience like the previous act.
Yeah. What?
I find it very hard to. Sorry. I start again.
Stop.
Yeah. So I get awful distracted. Sorry. Excuse me. I'll start the story again, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So, my friend, this Irish comedian, he's very respected. He's also very feared. And one of his impulses, one of his kind of self-destructive impulses is that if he doesn't like the act that has been on before him, but the audience do like the act, he will abuse the audience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that.
So he'll take it out on them and break the atmosphere and destroy it until everything is in crumbles. And then he'll build it up again.
Right.
So there's that kind of oddness as well. He has the respect of every comic in the country.
Yeah.
But audiences are a bit...
Do the comedians who went ahead of him know that he's doing that?
Yeah, but yeah.
Because it's a wave he doesn't want to ride.
Totally. But also it's kind of... I think it's brave, although if you can do something, I'm not sure you think it's brave.
Yeah.
People talk about stand-up being brave, but if you can do it, it's not brave at all.
Right.
So this is what my friend does. His impulse is to do that. For those of us who can't do that, we'd be kind of going, oh my God, that's so courageous.
Right.
But for him, it's second nature, really, you know.
Well, that's interesting then about stand-up, because we all have our tools. And I know I get anxious. I still get very anxious before. I'm doing a 15-minute set at the Comedy Store where I've been a million times. I can still get really freaked out who's going on ahead of me and where I'm coming from emotionally before I got to the show. And so, no, I think it's interesting, like, what is brave then? Like, I think for some comedians, it's so intense they throw up before the show. And, you know, I mean, is that brave, or are you just in the wrong line of work at that point?
Is brave putting in some work before you go on stage to write good jokes?
That's true.
Is that brave?
Nothing calms me down more than when I'm actually prepared. That's a really good point. If I walk on and I don't have any new material, and Louis C.K. is sitting in the back and Mark Maron's sitting in the back, and I know they've seen everything I've done.
Yeah.
And if I do the same thing over, then you see them leave the room, and you go like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
So I think that's when I feel the most anxiety, when there's other comics in the room.
Sure, we're all trying to impress one another.
Yeah.
I'm not able to write, though. I've realized over the years that the writing makes no difference. It's getting yourself into a playful state, so that when you go up on stage, you can create. But I've notebooks. I have 30 or 40 notebooks full of ideas that just aren't stand-up, because you can't recreate it.
Yeah.
They might have been saying this to you before, but I saw an interview with Louis C.K. where he just says, I go up with ideas and I flesh them out on stage. And I think there are a lot of comics who are like that.
Yeah.
You know, you just go up with an idea and the thing is to be constantly gigging. That's
Yes.
what I found for me. Constantly. 7 days a week, if possible. Just give me... And the stuff doesn't come to me as quick as it did when I was in my 20s. It comes a bit weirder now, and it's stranger. And sometimes I think is the strangeness a mask for inability? It might be, but it's where I'm at.
Inability to think quickly?
Inability to come up with stuff that was as good as the stuff I came up with when I started.
Right.
Maybe. But I know that I'm getting stranger. And I know that the show is much more, it's a much moodier show than I used to do. Like when I started off, I was so full of the joie de vivre. I was happy for everybody.
Yeah.
I wanted everybody to be happy. And now I'm, fuck you. I'm a bit more, there's a bit more kind of, a bit more angular darkness in me or something.
Yeah.
But that is just what's coming out at the moment. And I know that it takes me a lot longer to come up with the show. It used to take me, I could have a new show in 6 weeks when I started.
A new 1 hour show.
Well, 40 minutes anyway,
Yeah.
in 6 weeks.
All right.
Now I could be doing a tour where I'm doing an hour and a half of material, constantly working it, constantly, adding new stuff. And at the end of the tour, I'll just go, no. And then you're...
No to all of it?
Yeah, kind of, or something. I'm not expressing this right. It's more that because it's that's it. It's more that it's a constant work in progress now.
Right.
You're constantly fiddling with it, constantly bringing in new stories. That this thing of having a finished bit of work just doesn't hold. I was on tour recently in the UK, and I didn't like the show at all when the tour started. 2 weeks into the tour, it was as good as anything that I've ever done.
Okay.
5 weeks into the tour, it was shit. So it's really hard to know why that's happening. Or
Do you think that's a product of getting older and like when you're young, there's I don't know, you're more absolute. Your opinions are, and you get older and you go like, no, there's like 3 other sides to this issue that I need to look at as well.
I just think the thoughts are just slower in forming.
Yeah.
I just think there's a backlog, there's traffic.
Yeah.
It's just a slower process. But it can't be helped, I saw Bob Dylan being interviewed on telly, and he said, the guy was asking him about the 60s, and Dylan was there saying, well, I don't know, but darkness at the break of noon shadows even the silver spoon, handmade blade and the child's balloon. He says, can you imagine sitting down and trying to write that? He said, I don't know where that stuff came from. I can't write that now. And then he said this very interesting thing. He says, I can't write that stuff now, but I can do other stuff. Sorry, he's starting to sound like Martin Luther King now. I have a dream.
And that spoon has a dream.
Martin Luther Dylan. Yeah. So now Bob Dylan works as a Martin Luther King impersonator.
Yeah.
So but Dylan was basically saying I can do different stuff now.
Yeah.
I was talking to a comic earlier on today, and they were saying, sometimes people say, oh, you're not as funny as you were 10 years ago. And he was saying, but the stuff is different now.
Yeah, right.
It's different.
The sport is different. I mean, what people want to see, and I'm not overly concerned with what people want to see. That's never been my agenda with stand-up. But I do know that my style it's definitely changed over the years, but it hasn't tried to meet up with what they're looking for.
Sure.
But at the same time, if I do some old stuff that just, once in a while you pull out a bit when you're on stage, you're doing some crowd work and someone's from Michigan and you got a bit about Michigan that's 20 years old and you bust it out and you go, oh yeah, that used to be funny, especially when you're talking about race.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I had a lot of jokes about race. starting out in the clubs in New York City where half the audience is black, white, Latino, gay, German, and it allowed you to go anywhere because there was context, there was irony. You could actually, they would actually give you credit for your in a voice of some sort. And now it's so literal.
Oh, yeah.
Everything you say is taken as if it's being written on the page.
It's a bit more, I remember once, and I can't remember if I said this to you last time we were talking, driving into town and go with my kids. And we passed by, there's a lot of kind of Muslim guys queuing up outside this gym.
Yeah.
And I said, what's going on there? I said, and they went, what? I says, I wonder have they set up a mosque there for the guys to go and pray. And the kids had a conniption that I would even... You can't say that. You can't say that. Keep going.
Right.
Say what? What you just said. You can't say it. Can't say what that there's... Look, Dad. Can't say that.
Yeah, right. I like to tell my daughter like old racist jokes that my father used to tell me just because they're so inappropriate. And I know that it will never leave the house, but...
Yeah, it's a great name for a show.
What's
old
that?
Racist jokes my dad used to tell me. Great name for a podcast.
Yeah, and you have to pay a big subscriber fee to get in. You only want the right people listening.
Oh my God, that would be such a hit.
Oh my God, the jokes he would tell me because, he hung out with guys from the Bronx and they just told these jokes. And I don't think there was anything mean-spirited about them, but they do not hold up.
Yeah, it's all context, and they don't travel.
No.
I remember seeing, Bernard Manning was an English comic who did a lot of like racist stuff. It was
racial or racist.
I don't know. It's so I haven't seen a fierce amount of what he did, but some of the stuff he does, that's a bit mean.
Yeah.
Or it's a bit. He was kind of. Yeah, there's I'm not saying ugliness, but there was kind of. You'd be uncomfortable looking at it,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how somebody who is black would have felt back then, or would feel now looking at it. But he had this one phenomenal joke. He was talking about, he's got Manchester accents. Hello, welcome to the club, everyone. Welcome to the club. It's a working man's club. So lots of beer, cigarette smoke, low roof, and he's there in a tuxedo and he's fat and he's sweaty. Hello, welcome to my club. You're all welcome to my club. Big round of applause, please, for the two soldiers in the front row. Right, and the kind of, pride in the army. Two soldiers in the front row. Give them a big round of applause. And he goes, says, two soldiers in the front row. They're just back from the Falklands. Of course, fucking blitzed. And then he goes, they're Argentinian. That was fantastic because that totally pulled the rug. That's the only time I've seen him do that.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing about a racist comic is sometimes it's perfect. They didn't mean it to be. They didn't know there was a subtlety to it, but sometimes it's great. God, I'm trying to think. I wish I'd thought about this because I would have. I started in Boston before I came to New York, and that was racist. Boston is a very racist town, and I love it, and I love the people.
Yeah,
but it's sectioned off. You've got black people here, Irish people here, Italian people there, and they really doesn't spill over. And it's fostered this paranoia by the white sections that the black sections are moving in, and that was where desegregation in the North happened in Boston. That's where they did busing, and there was a lot of fighting back about it. But what would be the area in Ireland that you would find that mentality the most?
I'm not sure, really. Kind of.
In the Republic, of course.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The key to the whole thing is is kids.
Yeah.
You can say, you can have, say, a whole black part of town and an Irish part of town and a Jewish part of town and a Mexican part of town, Eastern European part of town. And if everybody's living in their own area, then you're going to have tribal interactions. And sometimes those tribal interactions will be racist.
Yes.
Okay. And that's, and whoever has the most power, I won't say they're the most racist anyway, if they stay in those different communities, so just in terms of Boston you were talking about there, if they stay in those communities, that's not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
But if the city says everybody's kids have to go to school together,
mm-hmm.
then in a generation, 2 generations, that has changed completely. And that's the key to it in Ireland, is that we got to send our kids to school together.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key.
Yeah.
But some schools don't want to do that. 3 of my older kids went to a really, really mixed school, people from all different communities, and it's fantastic for them.
Yeah.
But that's the key to it. And the same would be true of Boston.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why they tried to desegregate the schools, and it did not work. It's like you can't force it. You have to make it attractive to the parents to set. Like our kids went to a Spanish immersion school, so 50% of the kids in the school had to be from Spanish-speaking homes.
Yeah.
So, and that was just something we just felt like was organic. We wanted our kids to learn another language. We both grew up in New York in very diverse areas, and so we sought that out. But if people aren't seeking it out, it's hard to force it on them. They'll fight it, and it almost makes it worse. That's how it was in Boston, anyway.
I was telling somebody earlier on that I was walking down the road in Galway last week, and I met the nicest, most easygoing, friendliest, racist I've ever met in my life.
Don't you hate when they're nice?
I couldn't get, I just was going, oh, fuck off, really? Like, this guy is lovely. He's a lovely, gentle, slopey kind of walk as well. Just, his head to his toes, he exudes gentility and approachability. How are you, Tom? Well, I haven't seen you. And he's just oozing friendliness. How are you? Yeah. Tell me this now. Would you like it if Galway was half black? Would you? Would you like that now? Fuck off. You're easier to deal with when you're dressed in combats. But when you're not,
and then all of a sudden you're rethinking all your racist views. You're like, I don't know, he's a good guy. Maybe he's onto something.
I'll see you later anyway, Tom. But just don't, would you? Would you like that now if the whole town was?
Think about it, Tom.
And you could talk to him about other stuff, and he'd be lovely about football or politics or whatever.
Yeah.
But Jesus, Tom, now
just the racism, one recessive gene. Yeah, or it's a beautiful woman, and you're a single guy, and you're talking to her, and you really come up to a quotient of how hot does she have to be for me to look past racism for one night?
I don't know. Do you remember there was a Raiders of the Lost Ark where there was a very, very attractive blonde fascist Nazi in it? So I think Alison Doody was her name. She was in, I swear to God, Alison Doody. Google Alison Doody. One of the Indiana Jones movies.
Yeah.
And she was gorgeous. Oh my God, she was so beautiful. And I never met her. I would have loved to have met her just for one reason only, so I could say, howdy doody. But that's her name, Alison Doody.
Right.
And she's beautiful. But in this thing, she plays this, Harrison Ford must have been back in Nazi Germany or something, and she's got this blonde bob and it's beautiful, and the cap. So I don't.
You think you could see past the Nazism on that?
I think it might even turn me on.
Yeah, right.
I fucked a racist.
And then what you do is, right when she's about to come, you just stop.
Oh, I wouldn't even give her the pleasure of orgasm.
You cheat her in the orgasm.
She wouldn't deserve that.
My greatest gift? You're not getting my greatest gift.
I'd do anything for love, but I
won't do that. I always wonder what that was in the song.
I think we would all have a fair idea.
I mean, it is, right? Is there any argument that that's what it is?
I think it has to be.
Yes. Anything but that.
Yeah.
I just had my 25th anniversary, and I really did think that on that night, we went out to dinner.
Oh.
We went home. We were intimate.
No.
And I really did think,
No.
what about tonight? What about I waited 20?
No. Don't go there. Don't go there. How old is your wife?
58.
Fuck off. Who was a medical professional would balk at that. Stop.
Yeah, that door is closed and it should be locked.
And your own as well.
Yes.
Specifically, sober hers. Like.
Yeah, let's keep it simple.
Yeah, I think so.
We made it this far with simple. So, all right, here's some other things. Sometimes, I've always been tempted to, I write down some notes before my interview. I'm not like you. I actually do some work.
Let's see how it bears out.
And I always think that I want to show this to my guest and let them, interview themselves. But I did want to ask you about this big event back in June. This is fascinating to me. You were invited with 100 other international comedians, the biggest of the big, literally like the top 100 comedians in the world, were invited by Pope Francis. Was it at the Vatican?
Yeah.
To go to the Vatican. And
he's a big eat my shit fan.
did he have on the hat? He took off the triangular one.
Eat my shit.
Hey, you want to eat my shit, the guy.
He's nudging all the cardinals. It's him. It's the guy.
Yeah, they all sit around the laptop at night watching Tommy Tiernan videos. Oh my God!
You people who people will think that's an actual bit now.
Yeah.
They'll be going. Can't find it.
Now you got to write it.
Yeah.
So first of all, how did you feel? Because you are. We talked about this before. Your feelings on the church are not. You're not practicing.
No, I wouldn't have any. I love the stories. I'm very, very drawn to Catholic stories, stories of saints and stories of characters from the Bible. I love them. They feel very familiar to me, and I love thinking about them. But I'm not a practicing Catholic by any stretch of the imagination. Meeting the Pope was like meeting the CEO of an organization.
Yeah,
it was very much just here's the bloke that's in charge. And I think other people had different reactions. I think Stephen Colbert was very moved. I think Stephen Colbert did his audiobook. The Pope. I think he played the Pope.
No,
I think so. I think he said that to the Pope. I think he said,
well, he's a devout Catholic. Yeah.
So it was a big event for him. But it was very moving to see the Pope initially because he's so old. He's like 83 and he came in on 2 crutches. It was like he was kind of walking up Calvary with the cross on his back. It was moving. No, really it was. It was hard. But you probably get that in any residential place for old people. But I found myself being moved at that. You got a great sense of responsibility off him, and what's the responsibility he has towards, however, 2 billion Catholics in the world, and how much he cares. But it wasn't like meeting a holy man.
Yeah.
There just wasn't that vibe about it. It was amazing afterwards we went into the Vatican and St. Peter's, the Basilica. That was astounding.
Yeah.
That was mind-blowing. I would recommend any white person to go there.
There's not a lot of depictions of black people there.
It is the suffering of the whites.
That's hilarious.
It's 800 years of Caucasian pain. That's all it is.
If I was black, I would get one picture of a slave and just thumbtack it up in the middle of the Sistine Chapel.
That was very moving.
Yeah. Did you have a moment with the Pope? Did you shake hands?
I shook hands with him all right, yeah. But it was like...
Did anyone actually try to strike a conversation with him?
Not really, because I don't think English is his first language. So
okay.
But he looked at me and he smiled, and I got a pair of rosary beads off him.
So it was like Mardi Gras.
Is that what happens at Mardi Gras?
Yeah, you throw beads to women and then they show their tits.
What?
That's the deal.
Is that what he wanted me to do?
He doesn't like little. He doesn't
so
like little
bad.
boys. He likes old guys.
I'm always misreading the room. So I'd recommend it in terms of that.
Yeah.
So the church was an empire, a very rich empire. So they could commission phenomenal works of art. They could afford to.
Sure.
So they got the best European artists to do their best work. So it's a cross between an art gallery and a spiritual encounter with something that you can't quite name, but is very real.
Right.
And then so it's the size of Madison Square Garden, and it's all statues and paintings and Caravaggio, and it's dark. Like it's not this kind of Joel Osteen kind of bright, shiny, happy Jesus. This is a dark, brooding Caravaggio Christ of shadow and dagger and pain, and it's very moving. Yeah. That's what it was. So there were 3 Irish comedians invited.
Who were the other 2?
The other 2 were a guy called Patrick Keelty, who's from the north, and a guy called Ardal O'Hanlon, who's from the south as well. So,
what about British comics?
Not very many.
No,
I don't think the Pope is mad for the English. Really, I don't think he likes them.
Wow.
So there weren't many.
Yeah.
I think the reason the Americans were, I think Stephen Colbert was asked by the Vatican who bring 10 or 20 comedians with you.
Okay.
So he went through his, I don't know, so Chris Rock, I don't know if Chris Rock a Catholic or just a pal of Colbert's, Conan O'Brien, Jim Gaffigan, who I've seen on stage
He's Catholic.
before. Yeah. So a few guys like that.
Yeah.
Mike Birbiglia, Whoopi Goldberg, Tig Notario, and it was very interesting.
Yeah. But was there like a reception where you guys all hung out with each other?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great place to be gay, the Vatican. Openly, outrageously gay.
Really?
Oh my God. Just that there is no stopping those guys.
No kidding.
The priests in the Vatican, I'm telling you.
Really?
Oh my God, it's like that little village. What's the little village up on Cape Cod?
Oh, Provincetown.
Yeah.
It's like Provincetown
It's like
in
Catholic
Italy?
Provincetown. They're just, everyone is gorgeous and flirty. Well, look at you, funny boy. Really?
They're playing YMCA on the organ.
That I went to my wife and I said, that guy's just flirting with me. He's a breeze. It's all very confident.
Wow.
Confident.
Yeah, yeah.
Just all, and the Pope had got into trouble a couple of weeks before for using the word faggot. Don't know if you remember this. It was a big news story.
No kidding.
Yeah. So he was giving this kind of talk on something and he just went, yeah, well, I tell you, there's too many faggots in this place for a start. So,
Get out of here.
I swear to God. You can Google it. He said whatever the Italian equivalent is of faggots, and there was, big...
And he was talking about the Cardinals?
No, all he said was, he was talking about something.
Yeah.
And he says, there's too many faggots in this place. And then they tried to qualify it afterwards by saying, look, what he means by that it doesn't have the temperature that the word has now. He's from an older, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I was just, these guys were openly flirting with me.
Yeah.
And they were good looking as well, like Italian underpants models. And
Jesus, who was flirting with who?
Really?
Well, it sounds like they got your attention.
I remember very little of it.
You had a little sacrificial wine, and then all of a sudden, yeah, they were overserving everybody that day.
I think the iconography of Christianity, I wouldn't say it's homoerotic, but if you were gay, you'd have plenty to look at.
Oh, yeah.
If you were, I could easily see, because it's all in the statues that are in pain, obviously, they're hard to be aroused by, but a lot of the other stuff is of beautifully chiseled men. It's very, it's Michelangelo that did David.
Yeah.
You know, it's all that kind of stuff. It's all very handsome and proportioned, and whoever did it loved the human form.
Yes.
It's
Well, yeah, Da Vinci was attacked. He was a, what do you call it when you take bodies apart? You know, he would do what do you call it when you cut up a dead body?
it was
An autopsy?
the body's called a cadaver, isn't it?
Yeah, they would
Dismember
they would dismember a cadaver, and they would look at the way the ligaments and the muscles worked, because that's how he wanted to paint it exactly right. The abdomen and the thigh, and you know, the muscles. It's incredible.
And there are no bare-breasted women. So all these statues in this particular part of the Vatican. Now in the Basilica, it is a lot of mothers in agony, you know, because the female form is well represented there. But in the other parts of the Vatican, where it's just this saint or that saint or whatever,
no nips.
They've nipples. It's all men. It's all men. There's no.
No, I mean, there's no female nipples.
No, none at all. No hips.
Funny that you said none.
None. Anyway.
But
it's worth a visit.
We were there. We went about 5 years ago, and it was incredible, because I went in the summer, so they really moved you along. You couldn't loiter for too long. There was a general, like, you know, current moving through. But in Italy, you'd go to the piazzas in each town, and you'd have these statues that were, you know, 800 years old, and the women were sexy as shit, like beautiful, and not like, you know, you look like Egyptian nudes, and it's like they're like triangle tits.
Yeah,
these are like
never seen
real.
Those,
you ever saw the Egyptian tits? Yeah, they're not a lot of fun. No hang.
Okay, wow.
The Italian ones had like a little hang to them.
Okay.
they look like they'd worked for a living.
Okay,
you know?
wow. Well, okay.
Yeah, and the penises are
efficient.
They're efficient. That's why they keep knocking them off. You ever notice they're always knocking them off? So let's go back to the script.
Okay.
And then I'm going to let you go, because you're very generous. You doing a lot of interviews in town?
Not many, no.
Yeah.
No, not many.
Well, then I'll keep you as long as I want. Love. Oh, yeah. So you were talking about being loving the American sense of humor, that it's biting, and it's I think you like the sarcasm of it.
Yeah.
So when you go in front of an American crowd, do you feel like do you have locals opening for you? Bring somebody over with you?
No, I do it all myself.
Oh, you do it all yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, how it would have affected you to have an American comic go up and sort of be in a totally different vein from what you're doing.
What you're always hoping for is that, I would get this touring England as well, is that you're hoping you're giving them something that they are slightly intrigued by.
Yes.
So I don't know if you were playing in Ireland or England, they'd be going, oh great, this is kind of New York, Boston comic. It's got that edge.
Yeah.
You know, we like that. So when I'm performing in front of American people, it's that you are hoping that there's something about the way you use language, or this kind of stories you're telling, or the theatricality of your act. And maybe that slightly unhinged element to it.
Right.
That they're kind of going, oh, this is... Now, I don't know enough about American stand-up comedy to be confident that I'm doing anything different. So I really don't know.
Well, you are. You definitely are. It is more performative. It is more thematic. I think at the end of it, you take something away from one of your sets, whereas sometimes an American headliner goes up and it's like a boxing match where it's like, it's a series of jabs and hooks, and at the end of it, it's just a guy who got through a fight.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to really putting your feet down on the stage and delivering something that that's intentional.
That feeling of just being a guy who got through the fight, that's what I feel at the end of doing the show. So it's not that what I'm doing is contrived or noble or effortful, but it is, you're leaning into your weirdness, and that's the wrong word. Your oddity.
Yeah.
So that's what I enjoy about performing. Now sometimes, like I've done sets in comedy clubs in New York, and people are like, "What is this?" You know?
Yeah.
I'd be up and going, "Hey, so,"
Yeah.
and they're going, "No, it's fucking jokes."
It's a different rhythm. Yeah.
So I know sometimes it doesn't. In the theatre it's different because they're just there to see you and they might have some knowledge of you. But
it really is.
attraction.
If French is the language of love, I think Irish is a pretty good version of the language of comedy. I think there's really an amazing rhythm and cadence that to deliver jokes on. You know, like I think Derry Girls is huge in this country. Do you have any idea how big it is in this country? I mean, my kids and all their friends have seen every episode multiple times. And it's
fun.
It's just, it's well written. The acting is amazing, but there is also that added layer of this brogue that is, I don't know what it is that appeals to Americans about it so much is that it's just so fuck off.
Yeah. But I think I don't think that's only true of people with Irish accents. So I remember Dom Herrera had this great piece about black comics. And apologies to Dom if I'm doing this wrong. It was a great piece about how it was something along the lines of black comics actually don't have to be that funny. They just have to tell you what they did that day. And it's the cadence.
Yeah, yeah.
I was waiting for bus. Motherfucking bus. I was waiting for motherfucking bus. Bus, motherfucker. Where the bus? Where the motherfucking bus? I wait for the bus. So you're kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, there's nothing has happened.
Right,
It's funny.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then you get comics like, say, Jackie Mason. Mm-hmm. And it was well,
Yiddish is also the language of comedy.
Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
That had it. And I think they're the two off the top of my head now that would say that it's not particularly owned by Irish people in any way, you know.
No, I think Yiddish is that Jewish New York accent. Yeah, Jackie Mason and Milton Berle and Alan King and all those guys, they really, and they honed it because their comedy came up at a time when, and I think like black comedians, it's a lot of like stoop comedy, guys on the stoop making each other laugh and topping each other. Yeah. And I think with the Jewish comics, it was they would go off to the Catskills. Do you know about the Catskill Mountains? Yeah. So they go up there and they wouldn't even, they would do stand-up, but they would spend also 3 hours a day. There's a word for it, but it means you just go in the crowd. You mix with people at the bar and at the pool, and you just make people laugh. You do a little insult comedy, you tell jokes. And so they just got to know their voice in against the challenge of just going into nothing. You know? And I think that the Jewish experience also lent itself to comedy as well because, you know, it comes from suffering.
I think that it makes you drive harder at the jokes. I think it puts a bit of a fire in your belly. Yeah. You know, you're a bit more of an extremist, maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
I just watched another, me and the kids watch a lot of Marx Brothers. And, you know, these guys, Jewish guys that were coming up in the 1920s. Can you imagine what that experience was like? Yeah. And they would go on the road. I mean, they toured for years before they made a movie and just banging out these routines. Like the first couple movies, I think Duck Soup might have been the first movie. And they had done that show 1,000 times. And their rhythm, and you look at these movies, they're shot in one take, one camera, and it's physical. They're falling down, the rhythm that they're playing off each other, and it's all, and then if you see a cut, it's so obvious. There was no editing, but there'd be maybe one cut, an entire 3-minute scene. And it just, you know, there's a book by Cliff Nestoroff about the history of comedy and how Jewish people basically, you know, came up because there was no other jobs. They weren't being hired, and so they started going on the road doing comedy. Yeah. So, all right, listen, I'm so honored that you came in to do the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
We'll do it every year, whether you're here or we're on Zoom or whatever.
I'll be back.
And then we want to promote your tour dates. You got a tour coming up. What do you call the tour?
Comedian.
There you go.
There you go.
Thursday, October 24th in Toronto.
Tommedian, like, you know.
Oh,
like Tommy the comedian.
Oh, got it.
Comedian.
Yeah. Now, do you have a staff that comes up with that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of guys in a room with cigars, drinking a lot of coffee. What about this one, Tommy?
Tomahawk. Like tomahawk.
Tomode like a toilet.
Tom's away. How about Tom's away? Nope.
Tom's a wasted. I'm not going to give the dates.
Power. How about atomic power?
The dates are between October 24th and November 15th in this order. Toronto at the CAA Theater, Philly at the Perlman Theater, Boston at the Wilbur, great theater, New York at Town Hall, that's amazing, New York, and then the next 3 nights later at Town Hall, Chicago at the Vic, Minneapolis at the Pantages, Calgary at the McEwen, Victoria at the Royal Theater, Vancouver at the Vogue Theater, Portland at the Aladdin Theater, Seattle at the damn, you're doing all the best theaters. The Neptune Theater, LA at the Montalban, San Francisco Palace of Fine Arts. I mean, what a way to round it out. What a tour. That sounds amazing.
It's great. Very excited.
Tickets at Tommedian.com.
I don't know where the tickets are. I'll give you my number.
It's a good promotion. I don't know where the tickets are. You just show up. There'll be some tickets left.
Tickets on the door. Tickets are somewhere.
Tickets. Look for the tickets.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on.
Greg, thank you so much for listening to me.
All right. God bless.